I'm so not tech savvy at all, actually.
Neither neither am I.
I've been meaning to look into OBS, and it's not that I wouldn't be able to figure it out. That's not the problem at all. It's just I don't really feel like it, you know.
Oh,
But
I hear you.
I don't know if you know what OBS is.
It's isn't it that program? Is it a program?
Yeah, it's for
Yeah.
streaming, I guess. I just I don't know. I was thinking about trying to make these streams look a little bit what's the word, professional, I guess, but I don't know if it's worth I don't know if it's worth the time, to be honest with you.
Well, I'm not. I mean, I'm not really sure how other people do it, but like your last little, I think of them almost like podcasts, man. Like I put them on when I'm driving or when I'm working on something, and I just listen to them. I mean, I'll peek at it every once in a while, but other than that, it's just it's almost like your channel's like my radio talk host that I listen to about different things and keep updated on stuff because it's like you bring it all to the viewer. Like you do all the research and you take all the time to bring all this stuff up that we are manageable bite-sized pieces.
Yeah, that's usually how I get my streams or videos, even from a lot of people. I just tend to like walk around, do my thing while I'm working, and I just listen to, various podcasts and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think what's good with you though is just how you put it together. Like you put it together and it makes sense. That's why so many people like you. You know what I mean? Like you put it together and you actually let us hear what they're actually saying. Too. So it helps keep up on the news without having to sift through all the bullshit. You know what I mean? Because it's all there.
Yeah. Well,
So
some people like me.
well, I mean, you can't. I mean, I don't know what you have to do to get ask yourself to like you, but I mean, that's whatever.
That's like getting Serena Williams to like me. No thanks.
Yeah, I know, right?
Not
Well,
interested.
well, whoever that his name Brandon, the last guy you had a conversation with.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, dude, you walk. I mean, I'll be honest with you. Can I be honest with how I thought that went?
Sure.
At first, I was a little worried because as soon as he pulled off as soon as he changed the informal to the formal, well, this is the long form discussion. I was like, oh, he's about to pull some algorithm that x equals y, but not really. You have to divide it by this. Like I could tell he was gonna pull something crazy, right? And I'm like, oh, Carnival, please don't, like don't fall into whatever it is. But it's almost like you were so strategic about it that like at that 28-minute like 30-second mark you just crushed him and I was laughing so hard. I was like, oh my god, you got him. Like the whole sentience nonsense, I was like, okay, he's crushed. Like he literally can't go anywhere from here.
Well,
it
I
was it
mean,
was it was it was masterful, man. It really was.
what thanks, but you like you said, it's nonsense. So it's really not that difficult. You really basically just have to realize what trick it is that they're trying to pull, and once you learn what the trick is, it's really not that difficult to,
No, I
expose it for what it is. It's just
no,
nonsense.
absolutely, because I think the whole point you're trying to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, is the name the trait game is ridiculous because you could pull the opposite. Like, what's the trait that allowed that it makes it okay to eat plants, and you can find you take it to its logical, you know, the logical end, and it's always going to be nonsense. At least with yours, humanity. We're not talking about aliens, circle squares, stop, 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 stop. Like it doesn't go to that as quick. You know what I mean? Like that's the end all be all argument. And I thought it was funny because when it comes to because they always bring up murder and all these other things, and I kind of wanted to kind of give my because I thought we debunked this so many times, the name the trait thing, but I kind of wanted to do it from another perspective because I think about this stuff a lot because it's something that I have to deal with in my day-to-day life. So I was kind of wanting just to kind of bring that to your audience and see what you think, because I think we think a lot alike. It's just the application might be a little different. So that's kind of what I wanted to touch up on.
Right on. Yeah, just one last thing about the whole name the trait nonsense. They keep moving the goalposts. They keep changing. This is like the fourth or fifth version of name the trait. It just keeps morphing into something else, and they keep moving the goalposts because they just keep getting debunked over and over.
No, I agree. It's the vacuum thing, like you said, because at the end of the day, that's what it is. Because you did a great discussion with nutrition, and then I posted on that video And then I started to get some people like messaging me, and then so I messaged Nick and was like, "Hey, dude, if you want to talk, we'll talk." And I did like a discussion debate with him, and then he hasn't even posted any videos since. I kind of put him on the spot, and I apologize for it, but it's kind of the same thing. They live in this vacuum, but if you take our reality and their reality, you can see that they're much less ethical than we are. It's just you have to basically you have to feed it to them in small bite-sized pieces for them to realize, oh, I'm not very ethical. I'm not as ethical as I thought I was. You know what I mean?
What transpired during that discussion? Because I only caught like a few minutes of it. I did not.
Yeah. So he kept trying to bring up like, well, because we were talking about the ethics of it, and he was pretty much, it was just what you talked with Brandon about, not Brandon, but the other gentleman. You were talking about like everyone. It's all about, you ask these vegans why they become vegan, and it always comes down to the, the animal agriculture porn. The watching a pig, die from CO2 monoxide poisoning or getting throat slit. Like that's always what they're seeing, and that's always what that's all they want. Animal product food production. It's always commercial farming, right? And so then I explained to him, well, yeah, I don't think anybody here is defending, big animal agriculture, just like I'm not defending big plant agriculture. So we started to kind of go through the myths, like 60% of all crops are grown to feed animals. And then I gave him a very easy to digest diagram, right? I gave him this app. I had this apple diagram, and it's pretty much this. If I grow 10 apples, right, and I eat all 10 apples, but 8 of the apple cores from the 10 apples I give to my cow. Does that mean that 80% of all the apples I produce went to my cow? Well, obviously no. I didn't. The byproducts of those products I gave to 8 of them, 8 byproducts of the apples I gave to the cow. But the whole purpose of the apples was not to feed to livestock. It's the same thing with grain finished animals, right? At the end of the day, grain finish just means you're taking byproducts of corn, millet, soy, all these things. You're taking the shells, the hulls. You're taking the part of the plant that's not easily digestible by humans and can't be used for human consumption based upon FDA standards or whatever, and they put it into a big bag and they sell it to farmers and ranchers, and that's what grain finished means. So you can't say that 80% of all or 60% of all grain was commercially developed just for livestock. Now they're able to repurpose it like they can for beer, right? Hops go to beer. Hops can also go be fed to livestock because it's a byproduct.
Well,
So
the
once you break
mash,
it,
right? The
yeah,
beer mash goes
exactly.
to, yeah.
Right. So once you explain it to them like this, that argument goes away. And I'm like, well, majority of that went to popcorn, oatmeal, and Doritos, man. The majority of that did not go to animal products. The byproducts that can't be used for anything else will be given to the cow because cows have multiple stomachs and they ferment it down and things like that. So I kind of just slowly started to do that. And then he pulled the whole slavery argument like Logan Thunder did. And then I just brought up the facts, 70% of all child slavery is in the big plant agriculture business. So why do you support slavery? And then he was like, well, things need to change. I agree. And I'm like, well, you can say that all you want, but you're to permacultures. I'm a homesteader, man. I grow my food, and I know not everyone can do it. But if you're talking about, you virtual signaling, well, isn't child slavery bad? Isn't pesticides bad? Aren't all the animals killed by big agriculture bad? And I started to do that, and the whole appear to appeal.
I lost you. You're totally roboted out. Hello? There you are.
Yeah,
Are you
can you hear me?
back?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
back.
I just lost like the last couple of sentences of
Yeah, no,
yours.
and then so yeah, and that's how that ended. It was pretty much, well, we started talking about, he's said I appeared to history because mankind was developed on animal products and this, that, and the other. It's kind of like what you talked about in your B12 video. How much soil do you have to eat in order to get the mandatory B12 in it? You know what I mean? So it's pretty much ended with me just asking him why his life. How can I take him seriously when his lifestyle doesn't show that of ethicality? That's pretty much how it ended.
So you're saying he hasn't made a video since? You
I
you think
haven't seen a
maybe
video.
you
I
think you
don't think he
maybe got
has.
him eating meat or eggs or something?
I'm not. I don't know. Maybe he's just really busy with this Boston Marathon qualifier. But his last video was like hardcore. Like, I'm getting back into it, and I'm a proud soy boy and everything. And I'm not saying it was me, but hopefully I got him thinking, because at the end I really felt like he was like really like. I think I definitely pulled a string, because I kept asking him questions, and he's like, "No, that's a good point. You're right." Like, the last 5 minutes was just him. Like, he almost felt like I felt like he was beaten down a little bit, and that wasn't the intention. And I apologized. And then after the podcast was over, or the discussion, he had actually emailed me about, vertical farming, aquaponics, and just small things he can do in his apartment. And I sent him a bunch of links that I had and videos that I had to some of the stuff that I do. And I didn't hear back from him, but he did afterwards. He said that he had to go because he had a dinner. He had like a dinner date or something. But like 30 minutes later, he emailed me like, "Hey, can you send me some of this stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." So I hopefully my only hope is, if he's going to do it, like, hey, just think about think about doing some gardening yourself, or, just think about these topics that we were talking about. Because at the end of the day, if ethicality is what you're after, and you're going to the grocery store and you're buying supplements, you're not fooling me. You know what I mean? You're not fooling you. You know what I mean? So,
Well, I don't think most vegans have actually taken the time to think their position through to really try to understand what's truly going on. And that's why when piece by piece they start learning some of the facts, or they become aware of the fact that there's an opposition to what they're saying out there, and they investigate some of these claims or think about them logically, as a lot of them are presented in that way. I think the little bit of cognitive dissonance starts to set in, and either they dig their feet deeper, they dig in, or they start questioning their ideology, and who knows, maybe they start sneaking in animal products. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know either, but we know that the diet is not nutritionally sound, so they got to do something. I mean, a little bit of fish here isn't a bad thing, man. We just can't. You can't be posting it on Instagram. That's all. I mean, it's
I
super
mean,
easy.
if aborting what they perceive to be non-sentient fetuses is okay, then why can't you eat some, bivalves? Like, what's the big deal?
Well,
And
what's the big deal with children with no sentience either? You might as well eat them.
exactly, and this thing is like, they seem to jump back and forth between, oh, it's about not eating animal products, or it is about health, it isn't about health. It's about veganism is not eating animals or animal products, and then they'll say no, veganism is about compassion for the animals, not exploiting animals. So like they keep jumping back and forth about, as far as like what the definition is, which is kind of what we talked about when we opened the stream. How name the trait has morphed into all these various versions, and we're on like version 5 or 6 now, and it's still getting butt fucked. Excuse
Right.
my French.
No, you're right, and that's the thing. It's too many philosophers, not enough doers. And that, at the end of the day, to me, that's what it's all about. Because you have these people that want to philosophize, and where they end up? They end up supporting an industry that enslaves people and then kills hundreds of millions of animals needlessly, and then telling you you're a bad person because you aren't going to entertain some god alien complex that they have. At the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And I want to explain why. And that's kind of, I know that's really specific, but I kind of wanted to break down why, if you give me a couple of minutes.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with me, I'm the kind of person that my entire adult life, I've had to put on body armor and strap a weapon to me and do X, Y, and Z. Whether that's talking about military, law enforcement, executive protection, contracting, all that stuff. And the one thing that that I think about every single day actually is deadly use of force. Like, what are my parameters for the use of deadly force? And that could be in any aspect, because like what your counterparts were talking after the Brandon discussion is, every single day things can change. Every situation is a different situation, right? And so every single day I'm always thinking about deadly use of force, because it's a possibility. So being an instructor on use of force and understanding what it is in a real life application, I hold my life and the life of others on Graham's law. Have you ever heard of Graham's law?
I've heard of it, but I couldn't tell you
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah, no. So I'll kind of explain it to you briefly. So I'll give you like a week long course here in a couple of minutes because there's nuances, but this is pretty much the meat and potatoes of it, so to speak. So Graham's law is the idea and philosophy, if you want to call it that, of what constitutes the legal use, the legality use of deadly force. Because you can't take a bullet back, you can't take a knife back, you can't take all that back, and so you have to have something that's so hard proof, that holds the parameters so strong and the requirements so strong that the saying is when the use of force is justified, the implementation of that force is of no consequence. Meaning, it doesn't matter what device you use lethal force, whether it's a gun, a knife, a car, your bare hands. When it's justified, the implementation of that force is of no consequence. So Graham's law takes into consideration three things: intent, means, and opportunity. Okay, and so the best way to describe intent is what is the intent of what I'm doing and what is the intent of what that person's doing or animal or whatnot. Because I think we can all admit that, if we're in a defensive situation, whether it's a person trying to harm us or an animal trying to harm us, we have the right to use deadly force, right? I mean, I think most people, the right to life is a real thing. Now, you may have some liberal philosopher out there that doesn't believe in all that, and that's fine. There's nothing that I can do to change their mind. But as a basic human right,
Well, if you do have someone like that out there, you just take him out, and he can't say anything about that, right?
right? No, and so that's it's called it's called the use of force triangle or matrix. So one side of it is intent. That is your intent, and it is why you're doing it. So, a good example of the most extreme, right? So intent means an opportunity. You have to have all three. So intent could be this person is trying to hurt me. I'm going to use force, or like I said, in the most exigent circumstances we saw, like with the New Zealand rugby team that crash landed, right? And they were in the Alps. I believe they were in the Swiss Alps for a long period of time. They started to cannibalize each other. We also saw this in the Russian famine in the early 1900s. So human beings, and most recently in the 1970s, or I believe 1970s, in certain parts of China, there was a huge famine where cannibalism occurred. And we know that the Chinese eat dogs and stuff, and there's a whole cultural reason for that. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is, in different armament circumstances, the use of eating human flesh was justified because of those parameters, and that's why they call it Graham's law, right? Intent means an opportunity. Now, I'm not saying cannibalism is right, because it's not, but if you look at those circumstances of such need, those people were not held on crimes because of the situation they were in. The second one is opportunity. So intent means an opportunity. Means is just, do you have a legal means? Like, I can't just go to your house and steal your chicken or kill your chicken and eat it because I want to, unless I have a really good justification for it, right? Because then I could be held liable. So means has to do with the legality of that means, and also what do you have available on hand, right? Because there's one thing of, I stabbed this guy 5 times to keep me from saving my life, versus, yeah, I stabbed him 180 times, because at some point the intention changed. Once that person is dead, what is your intention? Because at any time, if one of these things disappears, it's gone. So you can see how it's a pretty trusted matrix. And the last thing is opportunity, right? What is the opportunity? A lot of people tell me all the time, well, what if somebody's outside my house and they're banging on the door saying that they're going to kill me and they're going to do this and they're going to do that, and they say they have a gun, but I'm upstairs hiding I'm upstairs. Can I shoot through my door? Well, depending on where you're at, you can't, because there's no opportunity there. You actually have a barrier that's protecting you. And obviously, we can get into the nuances of castle law and things like that. But when it comes to use of force, those are the matrix, and that's what I live by myself, right? I live by Graham's law. It's something that has been, tried and perfected over the years, and it's something that I think about every single day. So even when it comes to sustaining myself as somebody that grows their own animals, dispatches their own animals, if I'm killing a rabbit because I get some sick pleasure from it, that's not a justified use of force. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's just not. If I decide to poison an animal just because I want to see it die and regurgitate its own blood and have the blood come out of every orifice, that's not, in my opinion, that is not a justified use of force. Now, don't tell a vegan that, because all vegans care about is spraying the hell out of, some acreage of property, and having child slaves pick their food and have animals die through poisoning. They're okay with that, but they're not okay with the idea of, well, I need to eat and provide for my family, so I'm going to dispatch a rabbit for a meal that I'm going to consume, right? So when we're looking at this wholeheartedly, there, in my opinion, a lot of errors in the whole veganism, mindset of where they believe use of force is justified, because they do believe use of force is justified. I just don't think that their use of force is actually, in my opinion, as somebody that uses force, I don't think it's justified, and I don't think it's justified for those set established reasons that I told you. So yeah, if I'm killing an animal just because I want to see it squirm and I want to see all these horrible things, that's wrong. If I'm going to go take an animal that doesn't belong to me, right, and that means either going to your property, that's not my means. I don't have legal means to do that. That's not justified. Or if I shoot something out of season, right, that goes against local laws, that's also not a justified kill, right? So there's a lot of nuance that go behind people that actually care about animals and go out of their way to ensure that there's more animals left. Any hunter will tell you that as well. I can tell you that I just got some elk meat. Now, the hunters out there, it was a damage tag, so for those true hunters out there, they're probably going to say, oh, that wasn't really hunting, but I went and got a legal permit, went on somebody's property that was having an elk problem, and there they are. There's 60 of them destroying property. So, like I said, when you're talking about the use of force, that's kind of how I judge the ethics behind it. So when you look at the ethics of how I feed myself versus how a vegan feeds himself, I think there's a lot of holes in their ideology that they need to fix before I can even take them seriously. And that's kind of what I tried to talk to Nick Trishan about, and we briefly touched on it. But that's pretty much Graham's law for you in a nutshell, man. It's intent, means, and opportunity. And at any time, if one of those goes away or is no longer there, you do not have, in my opinion, you don't have justified use of force on anything, animal, human, what have you. So it kind of goes to that whole alien thing that if he were to bring up that situation, I would go back to my initial premise. I would say, well, Graham's law is still in effect, and I don't care if it's an alien, I don't care if it's human, or I don't care if it's an animal. I have Graham's law, and I'm going to abide by that until something else better comes out. I haven't seen it, but what are your thoughts?
Well, obviously, a vegan would tell you, I don't mean to play devil's advocate here, but they would
Please
say,
do.
well, you don't need to eat meat, right? They would say you don't need to kill these animals in order to feed yourself. But obviously, you could flip that around on them and say, well, I mean, whatever the hell it is you choose to eat kills animals no less. At the very least, the animals that I kill, I eat. They don't rot in a field somewhere, right? So, but it's difficult to find common ground with people who live in La La Land. So, like engaging in these quote unquote philosophical discussions with some of these vegans, you kind of have to give some ground initially in order for them to even want to talk to you, because we hardly agree on anything. So, how can we discuss anything if you live in La La Land and I'm concerned with what's real? Where do we meet? I don't
No,
know.
I agree with you, and that's kind of, and I don't want to say I feel bad because I don't, but that's kind of like how you did it with the intelligence thing, and you kept saying, "Well, let's just use this as a parameter." Like that was such an intelligent move. Like you gave a little, and you just snatched them up. That was
Well,
that
that's
was awesome.
that's the example that they always use in order to unload the argument, to deploy the argument. They give you this silly example just to show you how this would work. So, you know, that's exactly what I wanted to do. But if if you're completely honest about what it is, what this ethical system is, and you present it in the simplest way possible, it just falls apart. It has no leg to stand on, and that's why they don't want to talk about it honestly, what it is, what it actually means. They want to use big words and confusing sentences that don't make a lot of sense to a lot of people. A lot of people just aren't interested in unwinding the BS, because it's if you can't make it simple enough for me to want to listen to you, if you're making this complex, you're making it simple complex, then how are you actually thinking you're going to convince anybody to become vegan using these means, right? It doesn't make any sense. You're not necessarily trying to appeal to like your fellow philosopher buddies. You want the whole world to go vegan, basically. So you got to talk the same language that most of the world speaks, and not this, mumbo jumbo nonsense that doesn't actually make any sense. Because ultimately, you're not even able to convince the people that do speak your language. So how right are you, right?
I totally agree with you, and that's why with Nick Trish, I kept pushing like, well, how do you expect me to take you seriously when you support this, when you support that, and then it goes back to the animal porn stuff, and I'm just like, no, seriously, like I can't take you seriously. How do you expect anybody to take you seriously? And I just kept pushing him and pushing him. And I'm like, well, I see what you eat in a day, and I've looked up some of these companies, and this is what you support. I kind of did a little bit of that BS just to get him to start thinking like this is what your decisions are doing. So how am I supposed to take your ethics seriously when this is what you support and everything you throw at me? It's nonsense. It's obvious that you haven't done your research, and it's obvious that we can both agree that there are better ways to go about it. But my question to him is, what are you going to do about it? Because he was like all excited because he's from the New York area, so he's all excited about how the governor of New York put in meatless Mondays and all this stuff, and he thinks government's the answer. Which, hey, that's whatever. But what are you doing to make the world a better place? You keep saying that things are bad, but what's the real answer? What are you going to do? Because you are still in your own practice doing supporting all this immorality. So how do you expect me to take you seriously? And I just, I kept
Well,
doing
I
that
would
hardcore
say
press, but
I would say immorality insofar as you define it, because I don't necessarily think it's immoral to even torture animals. I don't prefer that. I wouldn't do that, right? And I wouldn't
sure.
support anybody doing that. But I don't see how, to me anyway, like the animal has no rights, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't put, for example, a person in prison for torturing an animal unless there was, not because that animal has rights. If you want to make the argument that torturing the animal, breeds some kind of behavior that could reflect or be, nurtured and used against other human beings, okay, well then that's maybe a valid argument. But simply because you're hurting that animal, I don't think, I'm just very cautious of not trying to give animals any rights because they don't have any rights. It is what it is, right? And if like you want to bring it back around to, well, what about your dog? Well, my dog is my property, so you know it is what it is. But I think this is the problem. And once again, we're going back to La La Land with these vegans, is that they swallowed the dogma hook, line, and sinker, and they haven't actually considered what the opposition has to say. So they think that they are righteous, that they're right. What it is that they're doing is correct, and anybody who disagrees is immoral. Point blank. Period. This is the assumption that they work from without having actually done the research and looked into the damage or the suffering that their diet might be causing. It's all they know is Dominion, whatever the names of these documentaries are, that completely misrepresent what's actually happening in animal food production industry. You know what I mean? So
No, I totally agree with you. The problem is, it's kind of like the problem that you're having that I'm actually starting to see myself. They're not open to debates, man. After the whole
but
after
that's really
the
what it is. Like they'll
yeah,
they'll they'll talk over you, they'll attack you, they'll get on a hangout and quote unquote try to own you and all that other ego tripping BS. But they don't debate in good faith. They don't debate honestly. Go ahead.
right. No, and that's the thing. After the nutrition debate, like all his friends like that had open debates on, like I messaged them and they're like, no, man, we're not interested. We just basically the response I got back from all of them are, we're not interested. We just don't see eye to eye, and that was pretty much what I got back from a lot of them. And then this bot from Ask Yourself, because he has so many bots, he started trying to troll me, and I was just like, hey, let's just have a discussion on it. He's like, no, I think you should go talk to Ask Yourself. And I'm like, well, he has my info. Like, you know, I I'm not gonna create. I don't have social media besides YouTube, so I'm not gonna create social media just to have a chance to whatever. If there's a live stream he wants to do or whatever, like that's fine. But I'm not creating one just to debate him. Now, if somebody wants to put it on and have a moderator in the whole thing, like whatever. I'm not that big of a fish, but you know what I mean. But most of these
Wait,
people,
Ask Yourself wants to debate you?
no, well, one of his bots, like
Well,
one of
yeah.
his little, it's like kept saying,
Minions.
yeah, kept saying, well, here's his info, like get on Twitter and he should get back to you within a couple hours or whatever. I'm just like, yeah, I'm not creating a social media just to talk to him because I mean, I don't think number one to be that productive. But if somebody were to want to moderate it and he was open and he was just like, hey, I'm gonna try to slam through as many carnivores as possible, like, yeah, I might jump on and have a discussion with him. But most of these people, just to have just a civil dialogue, like they're totally not open. It's the same thing you're having. Nobody wants to talk to you. You put out a challenge, nobody wants to talk to you. And then when Brandon does want to talk to you, it seemed like he was talking to Ask Yourself the exact same time he was trying to argue you. And then he even said, "Go talk to Ask Yourself." Like it was almost like he was his hook, line, and sinker is, well, I don't have the answer, but Ask Yourself does. Like you should talk to him. It's like, no, I'm talking to you, dude.
Yeah, I mean, his tentacles are everywhere, I guess, at least when it comes to these vegan slash versus carnist debates. I even think that when I was talking to Brendan, I think he was live on Discord getting pointers because, like, the things that he was saying, it's like I was talking to, well, you know who, and it really, he kept mentioning the guy, like, oh, he wants to talk to you, he wants to talk to you. I'm still waiting for the email, but forget that guy. I don't even really want to talk
No,
about it.
no, I agree. Oh, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say as far as the ethicality goes. Like, I don't see, like, if any vegan out there, and I'm sure I'm not going to speak for you, but if any vegan out there wants to like really sit down and talk about the ethics of where they get their food, if you can show, with math or science or anything that plant agriculture is somehow more superior than people that eat animals or animal products, I want to see it because I know it firsthand. I really want to know what the science is and where you're getting this information from because it couldn't be further from the truth. And I've looked at everything, the whole rainforest nonsense. Like I've looked at it all, and it's all garbage. It's all garbage science that's easily debunked. And every time you try to have these conversations with these people, they simply don't want to talk about it. They don't know the real. Oh, you're right. They just know the Dominion, Forks Over Knives. They know all these documentaries. But they don't know the real science, the real math, especially behind the rainforest. Because if you take the numbers, the rainforest should have been destroyed like 2 decades ago, like completely non-existent. But there's more trees now than there were before. Like you're looking
Well,
at
and
all this stuff, and it's just
peak oil happened, almost 20 years ago, and yet
right.
gasoline is cheaper than in a long time. So go figure. It's
Totally agree.
it's all a bunch of BS. No, but this is exactly the problem. They want to deploy these. I hesitate to call them philosophical even, but it's sophistry, it's tricks, it's trickery, it's word games. It's hoping to use terminology that you are not familiar with, so that you look quote unquote dumb. It's trying to get you caught up in their way of arguing when you're still on, like, I eat 2 steers a year, let's say, a couple of fish, when just to get that bread to your table, you're killing hundreds, maybe thousands of animals, right?
Right.
But they don't want to talk about any of that. It's all about this so-called philosophy and this shit that, I have no problem with philosophy, and we could talk about whatever the hell it is anybody wants to talk about. But if we reject reality, like, your philosophy is worthless if it's not grounded in that which is true, but it's grounded in some intergalactic sentient, non-sentient cows that are godlike or some shit like that.
It's
What are
ridiculous.
we talking about? What are we really talking about? It's
No, I agree with you. If they want to talk about us enslaving aliens, well, why don't you talk about him supporting child enslavement every time he buys a plant based product. And that's what I would keep. That's how I keep doing. I always refer them back to their own what they're currently doing today. But yeah, reality is so. I think it's just great. Honestly, whenever you debate somebody and they instantly bring up circle squares, and aliens, I can't imagine how that makes their case. I just don't get it.
like, who's gonna sit there and listen to this guy and go, oh yeah, I should go vegan? Like, what average Joe is just going to be like, yeah, you've convinced me, dude. It's all soy burgers from now on. Like, it
Such
just
a
doesn't
double
work.
standard. Such a double. I loved it when you said, "Well, is it okay to eat a child with Cecily?" And he's just like, "Well, like if you were to give the same answer he gave, he would just try to destroy you. Like, no, give an answer, blah blah blah. But the second he says it, it's totally okay. Like, oh well, I just don't have the answer, and
Well, but at the very least, kids with anencephaly do exist, whereas intergalactic, godlike cattle doesn't. So it's just
exactly
like, dude, what are we talking about here? Are you really interested in the here, the now, and what's real? Or are you just trying to like deploy some kind of a trick in order to win a debate online and pat yourself on the back because you're a fucking loser in real life? You know what I mean?
I couldn't agree with you more. Like I said, you destroyed it. Like I literally at the 28-minute mark, like I was confused as to where it was going, and then you finished it off, and it was like you should have seen his face, or at least like his voice. Like, I don't think you could see his face, but his voice was what. Well, I didn't say that. I think you have to look at it into totality, and you're like, no, it's as simple as that. No sentience. Can you eat them? Think there's bigger implications. Well, no, it's either that's the trait or it's not. Like, what is it here? And then that was just perfect.
And
And I was just
all I
like,
needed, to say was, is it okay to holocaust an infinite amount of non-sentient human beings? I don't even have to demonstrate that these beings exist or that it's possible for them to exist, because if you're going to talk about some godlike alien species that for them sure doesn't exist, or at the very least you can't prove that it does, then why can't I just say non-sentient human beings, right? Why is that
right,
so difficult? But these people, they're not even, it's fun, it's interesting, some people are into it, but it's gotten to a point where I'm just done with this nonsense. You know what I mean?
no, I hear you. That's another thing I want to talk to you about. Is the wordplay, right? Because murder, that's a word that for lack of better terms, I'm very I understand that word in many different aspects, especially of law, right? You can take it, and it's funny because you look at UK law, you look at New York law, you look at Oregon law, like you look at all these different states that are quite different in application of law, right? And murder is the same, has pretty much the same definition. It's the intentional killing, unlawful killing of one person to another person. And I like how they try to use that as, well, why are you murdering animals? Well, technically, by definition, it's not murder. If my intention is not unlawful, and that's why intent means opportunity is so important in use of force, because it's used universally. And so I just think
Well,
that's interesting that they don't
but
say it's unlawful, but it's like, okay, well, tell me what unlawful would be.
that's what they're doing. They're sneaking in axioms.
Oh, I know, and that's kind of something that Nick tried to do, and I stopped him right there. I'm like, no, that word doesn't make, according to the definition that I have, unless you
Yeah.
can show me some case law, that word does not mean what you're saying. Or
Well,
holocausting, like we know what
technically,
holocausting is. Go ahead.
technically, you could use the word murder to talk about that, but it's hyperbole. You know what I mean? It's not very accurate, and it's something a poet might do, or a writer might do for effect, right? You could do that, but the way most people understand murder is completely different. It's what you said. It's a legal term, and it means not just killing a person, because there are lawful ways of killing somebody. It's not. It doesn't even apply to killing all or anybody, is what I'm saying. It applies to killing somebody unlawfully,
Right.
unjustified killing of another person. So
Sure.
when they call, generally what they're doing is when they say, killing an animal is murder, what they're saying is that humans and animals are equal, basically, and that's the axiom that they're sneaking in, that you and I don't agree with. It's really dishonest the way
Right.
they
No.
do it.
Yeah, and poetically, I would say we'll define it, because if you're not okay with murder, then you got to not be okay with poisoning, over 70 million birds annually and enslaving children, because that's what you're doing. And holocausting, like animal agriculture, is not holocausting. The purpose of Holocaust is to intentionally exterminate a group or race of people. So if you want to say animals are people, well, I hate to break it to you, animal agriculture is about creating more animals, not creating less or not getting rid of them. So the word holocausting doesn't even make sense. But for animal agriculture, you're trying to holocaust anything on that parcel of land. That's what you're intentionally trying to do. I don't
Well,
know.
and Holocaust, I think one of the definitions, or maybe the most apt one, is to destroy by fire or something along those lines, right? To create massive destruction, and I think specifically with fire. Maybe that's just one of the definitions. And
Sure.
if you want to go by that, then you know that's exactly how a lot of plants are grown in a lot of different parts of the world. Huge fields of whatever are just burnt in order to make way for plant agriculture. So you are essentially holocausting, you know, birds, or rattlesnakes, turtles, rodents, everything that stands in a way of you planting that seed and growing that grain or whatever it may be.
Absolutely. See, another thing we agree on. Well, I think we got. I mean, I think we did good. That was pretty good for pretty quick. What else do you want to? I mean, that
I don't
was.
know.
I mean,
I'm
I
trying to
literally,
get a
I
vegan to
literally,
hop on and disagree.
yeah, I know, right? Like every time I talk to you, we said we disagree on some things, but I think for the majority of it, like we see things a little differently. But it's spot on. I mean, I just don't see what the argument is, especially at this point. Like, and it's funny because I was talking with Sea Siren, and we kind of were having a discussion. She we're talking, like, she's like, what even got you into this whole thing? And I told her the story right quick, and she's like, that's just nuts. And I'm like, yeah, I know. Like, it was completely, like, I fell into this whole veganism thing, not even knowing, like, this was actually like a thing. And then I found you instantly and seen that you've been fighting the good fight for a while now. And I'm just like, wow, like, people really believe this stuff. It's just,
I don't
I
get
don't
it,
know.
man. It's what I've oftentimes related to is people, and especially, I don't mean to get racial or anything, but especially white people, because for so long, white people have been told that they don't have any culture, that they don't have any history, and all this other nonsense that's completely untrue. But because it's not okay to be white, like someone who's of like ethnic descent, that's their whole identity. It could be potentially if they wanted it to be, but as soon as you place your identity on your skin color as a white person, oh, you're a racist, you're shunned, right? So I think what
No,
happens with a lot of white people is they jump to like these ethnic pursuits like yoga, and they give themselves all these funky names, and they become yogis, and all of a sudden they're named after like natural disasters or plants or animals, right? Or the sun or the moon or what have you. Or they turn to something like veganism because they're looking for an identity. They're looking for culture. They're looking to be accepted, and they're looking to be good. That's why, because, it is what it is, in my opinion. White people have just been beaten down by society at large and told that, you're bad because you're white. And don't you dare, you know, try to like hold on to your whiteness, find your identity elsewhere. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of white people. And when you look at veganism, obviously it's all across the board, but for some odd reason, and I've been trying to understand why that is, for some odd reason, it's predominantly white people. And this is like,
no, you're,
you
yeah.
know, it just doesn't make any sense to me otherwise. This is just how I see it. I could be completely wrong.
No, I think culturally too. Obviously, if the two of us, we're brown people, right? We're minorities, if you want to say that, but we have
I'm a
culture, right?
mutt. I'm a mutt.
We
I'm,
well,
I'm, I'm
I'm a
European
mutt too, but
ethnically, but
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, we have cultural roots, like, for example, me, permaculture runs in my family. I have permaculture, trees and bushes like go back 5 generations. I have animals that go back 5 generations and stuff. So for me, we have a culture, and food is big in culture. I don't care who you are. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I kind of see that, you have these people that they fight for something. They want like they're part of something, and they don't have an identity to be part of. Well, that's where you find, really made for some people, or vegan, or being a fur, or crazy things that people have. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but you're right. A lot of these people that don't have a self identity have to find it or find purpose in something, and that's what a lot of people do. And I do notice that a lot of vegans tend to be, Anglo-Saxon, persuasion, so to speak, to be politically.
You're breaking up again just a little bit.
Sorry, but yeah, I agree with you. I guess is what I'm saying. You're right. I
Oh, I think we lost you again.
Are you there?
Yeah.
I hope not.
No, it's better
Am I
now.
there?
You were gone
Okay.
for a while.
Okay, but yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't know what it is, but I think you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, that's all right, man. It is what it is. I mean, I'm not too optimistic about the future, but what keeps me going is the fact that the things that I believe are will come to pass, I probably won't be there to witness them, or I'll move to another part of the world where it's still behind the times, if you will, and still somewhat free, which is a big reason why we're in Ecuador. I mean, if this is the biggest misconception people have in the Western world, they think that they are free, when in reality, you come to a third, second world country, and I'm not saying that they're completely free, but the kind of freedoms that you have in these countries that are you're always being told, oh, you know, they're socialist, or you know, they're backwards, you don't have, they don't respect human rights, yada yada yada. You have so much more freedom in the third world than you do in the Western world. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, because people are just trying to survive. They're trying to do what they need to do.
Well, and you know, the police officer is your neighbor or somebody that knows you. You know what I mean? People are
Right.
still very much connected. So like it's they're not as disenchanted from community. I mean, it's happening slowly. People are the you know, the tight knit close community relationships that people may have in a country like Ecuador is clearly slowly those are being, you know, broken up and torn apart, and that it's happening with the family unit, so on and so forth, with you know, transsexuality rearing its ugly head, and then all that other stuff like slowly coming to the forefront, but it's still backwards enough to where it's pretty free for the most part.
Yeah. So talking about the future, I kind of want to touch up what you guys were talking about as far as vertical farming and that kind of stuff. Is there anything you want to know? Because I'm very familiar with those applications of farming.
Oh, that's what what's his face, Magnus,
Yeah.
what quite the name there, was talking about. Yeah, what about it? Go ahead.
So vertical farming is great, but I think how he was talking about it was like in the sense of like hydroponic vertical gardening, which is starting to become popular in like the Silicon Valley. Like they're starting to come up with these systems. Personally, looking at it, I think vertical gardening is great. However, this idea that we're going to make huge, we're going to take farmland and make them into these vertical farming, oases and big building oases, I think is just, it's not feasible. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. When you're talking about things like, vertical farming, or you're looking at hydroponics, like especially hydroponics, they still require a lot of supplementation for plants, so to speak, right? They require minerals, they require chemicals in order to put in the water. It uses 90% less water, don't get me wrong, but it requires a lot. And when you're looking at how much big plant agriculture is subsidized, they're never going to be able to keep up with that demand. For a great example, in the US alone, plant agriculture was subsidized more so than oil. And with this year in the United States, with all the hurricanes and stuff, Trump actually gave like an extra 10, $15 million to plant agriculture to help, offset their costs in order to keep the cost of produce somewhat manageable for the average consumer. So these things aren't going to take off until, you know, realistically, until you end subsidies. What they are good for is for the average person, right, or a community. And that's what a lot of people don't understand about like the victory gardens and stuff like that. That works on a small scale. It works in neighborhoods and communities, but this large scale monocropping system doesn't work. The only thing that's working really well in the third world in Africa actually is aquaponics. But that's because you're taking fish waste and you're reusing that water, and they're using it in big football field type stadiums, and they're producing tons of food. Like that's saving lives right now in Africa. So the more subsistence types of farming using technology is actually working. And the great thing about aquaponics are, yes, it requires some electricity, but it's only to do a pump. And in places like Africa, it's really good because you have a shit ton of sun, and a pump doesn't require that much water. And all you got to do is get it on the first tier. And then you can use gravity and you can use everything else. So, when it comes to vertical farming, it's good, but it's good in smaller applications because you still need soil. And it uses a lot less soil than you would if you just had a flat surface or a hilled surface. So you got to use a lot of either petrochemicals, or you have to use some kind of compost tea and that kind of thing. Compost tea works great. Using animal waste works great, but there you go with the animal stuff again. You know what I mean? So these systems work, but they work better when it's smaller and localized versus this idea that you're going to find the permits and you're going to be able to put a big building in New York somewhere and produce all this food for the millions of people there. It's just not going to be able to compete with the agriculture subsidies. But it is good for if you're trying to be somewhat sustainable and offset your costs.
I
I
can
thought,
see this working with something like, I don't know, arugula or something like that, like very delicate plants that need a specific environment, and they're expensive crops basically. I could see these, I could see vertical farming being used for certain applications here and there to grow certain things. But like you're saying, in order to feed the population, that's never going to happen. And hey, could you do me a favor and just mute your mic maybe when you're not talking?
yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, there's just a lot of background noise sometimes not. But whenever you want to hop on, just unmute it. Anyway, like you're saying, I don't think I mean, I don't know what the future may hold, but as things stand right now, you need to use soil. You need to use all this land that's available, and it makes sense. It's efficient. You just got to do it right. The problem that I have with vertical farming is that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. I may not be able to think of all the problems with it, potential problems right now, but that's because I haven't given it the time to think about it. It hasn't been implemented on any great scale. We haven't seen any disasters like a huge power outage and then all your crops go to shit basically. For example, right? There's other issues probably, but the problem I have with that is that it smacks to me of this Agenda 21. And no, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a fact, right? Obviously, you know, dispossessing the small farmer, getting people out of the countryside, cramming them into these cities, and trying to put these other ways of producing food on the pedestal, which may lead some people to want to completely abolish just traditional ways of farming because look, we found something better. And it's just like veganism, right? We found this thing that's going to work. It's better, it's more efficient, it's more environmentally friendly. Who cares if any of these claims are true or not? There's been documentaries about this, so it must be true. And now we have to get all these indigenous people out of the countryside and move them into the big cities because they're polluting the countryside and it's unethical to do that, yada yada yada. I could completely see um, this concept of vertical farming, which I'm not rejecting completely at all, because I do believe it could be useful in many instances, especially a country like Venezuela. I mean, they could have been benefiting from that right now, right? But to me, it just smacks of this whole green agenda, a green revolution, and a direction in which I don't think humanity should be moving. But what the hell do I know?
No, I mean you bring up some good points, and like I said, with the farm subsidies, like if you look at it in totality, it does not make sense. And anybody that wants to debate me on that too, let's talk. I thought it's funny because Foot Soldier was you brought him up. That was in the last discussion. Foot Soldier actually was talking about. I guess there's this vegan thing going out that organic is not vegan or something crazy like that. Anyway, so he was talking with this guy and vegan or a Foot Soldier or whatever his name is. He was like, "Hey, I really want to get John Kohler from Growing Your Greens," which John Kohler, I'm very familiar with his work. I know as far as his products and stuff go. Like I've been following him for years. I know people mutually with him, and so he was like, "I really want to get a permaculturist on. I'd like to get him on to talk about it." And I actually reached out to him, like, "Yeah, I mean, I can. I'm not saying I'm John Kohler. I'm not saying I'm him, but as far as permaculture questions go, I can definitely, answer some of your questions that you were getting. This guy was trying to stump you up on. He never obviously took it. I'm sure he's a busy guy, but yeah, there's so many misconceptions out there, especially about growing plants. And you would think that vegans would be somewhat subject matter experts on growing food, or at least knowing how their food is grown. And they're complete idiots. But yeah, I'm not saying that it's wrong. Like vertical farming and stuff, it's great. I personally think it's great, but how I apply it off grid. my vertical farming structures, my containers, they have compost bins built into them that slowly excrete compost heat into the soil. So, in that regards, that's how I get it to work. You know what I mean? But that requires some ingenuity. But most people, you're right, they don't understand how food's grown, and it's always technology's jobs to fix their inadequacies. Well, we'll just get all these buildings and we'll just retrofit them to have all these lights and water and this and that, and they don't understand how economy works, and they don't understand how food is grown.
It
And so
doesn't
it's
sound very sustainable to me, to be honest with you, because you got to upkeep these buildings, you got to maintain them, you know. That's all going to cost a lot of money, and so I don't see how that's on a big scale. I'm not saying that some application of this wouldn't be beneficial to some people, definitely, but I just don't see how that's going to be more efficient and more sustainable than doing it the mom and pop way. Obviously, the most efficient way, which is why it's happening this way, is monocropping and the way we're doing agriculture right now. That makes the most sense, and by that I mean dollars. So that's why it's happening right now. Whatever environmental damage this may bring about, nobody seems to care ultimately, which is why I'm very distrustful of vertical farming or anything else that's being pushed from the top down, right? Not from the bottom up. Anything that's being proposed by, these people that don't necessarily have any experience doing any of this. They don't necessarily know what this may or may not lead to. They just get this bright idea because, they're an electrician or something, or they know about water pumps and stuff like that, and they want to be involved in these mega projects that move water 40 feet up vertically, or whatever people are motivated by, like someone like Foot Soldier who you brought up. It's not necessarily what it is that they say they're motivated by, right? They might want to say, oh, this we should do this because it's more sustainable, when in reality they just want to save animals or get their uncle's cousin hired for the job on this next vertical farm here and there. So anytime I'm highly skeptical anytime there's these big proposals from the top down that require all this new technology, which will necessitate workers, and it might be okay for certain kind of economy, but I believe if people just went back to grassroots and the way that things have been done traditionally, because that way works for sure, we know it does. I think people would be happier. First and foremost, they would live more fulfilled lives. They would be healthier, and it would be more sustainable, and our populations wouldn't explode. Because with all this technology, once you're able to provide all this, it's not like population grows and then the food production follows. No, that's asinine. First, you have to be able to produce a certain amount of food before you could sustain a certain number of people on the planet. So because of technological advances such as vertical farming, we're able to feed more and more and more people, while at the same time saying, oh, the world is overpopulated, we need to do something about that. No, it doesn't make any sense to me. And of course they want a lot of people on the planet, despite what some of these conspiracy theorists might want to tell you. Of course they want more people on the planet, because that just means more slaves and more money. And you have to keep inflating. I know I'm all over the place right now, but you have to keep inflating the economy. You have to keep, you have to create new consumers and new workers and all this other stuff in order to keep this economy going, because they keep pumping money into the economy. You need consumers. You need people to prop up this fake artificial system that's ass backwards, in my opinion.
No, you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, I will say that as somebody that grows food regularly, these big incentives to push vertical farming and hydroponics, it's not going to work, and it's not going to work because of cost. And second of all, you're not changing anything as far as if they're outside, the pesticide, it doesn't do anything to change that. So realistically, are they good for small scale farming, community farming? Absolutely, they are. My aquaponics system, it's off grid. I love it. It produces a lot of catfish, and I want to do tilapia, but it's great and I love it. But yeah, it took work and it took You know, it took ingenuity on my part. But like you said, there's nothing like grass-fed animals and raised beds. I mean, that's just how it's been. That's how it's been for generations and generations. And once you get the soil right, it just works. So people just need to look at food differently. And what you're the things you brought up are excellent points. Like I said, if you are doing it yourself, yeah, these things can work outstanding. I've seen them. But if you're talking about you want somebody else to fix the problem for you, and you think these big collective type of agriculture technology is going to save and feed the world, you're highly mistaken. And that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, but that's really the problem. People don't really want to produce their own food. They want to go to the supermarket. Wow, they just want to be able to purchase everything that it is they need, and they want to go to their job. They just want to be cogs in the machine. And I suppose you could say, well, any farmer is exactly that. But at the very least, that is the machine that the farmer created and not the controller, right? So once again, I'm back to top down, bottom up. And ultimately, I mean, if we are to be happy ourselves, if we are to be in control, like, here, you and I, here we are discussing things because we're actually interested in doing these things, not just talking about them, right? Because we see the benefits and it makes us feel good to do these things. You know, if if these things are ultimately for us, then we should be in control, is the point I'm trying to make.
No, I totally agree with you. Like, I'm sure how good a vegan feels whenever he roasts somebody that doesn't know anything about where their food comes from is probably, I get that times like 10 whenever I can, feed me and my family with food that I've raised myself. You know what I mean? Like, you're right. At the end of the day, there's no more gratifying feeling, in my opinion, than being able to do something for yourself. It's just what it comes down to. You know what I mean? And
And you
I'm
spend
able
a
to
lot
do
of
it.
time outside,
Yeah.
hopefully there's fresh air where you are, like you get to put your hands in the ground and literally ground yourself. A lot of people want to laugh at this, but this is very important actually, and it makes you feel better versus just staying, being sat down all day in front of a computer. And God knows I do enough of that anyway. But at your job, at this or that place where somebody else is just piling papers on top of your desk, and you never get to see the bottom of it, and okay, maybe the money's good and maybe you get to purchase all these things that dull your pain, once you get home. But ultimately, I think if people actually like try to break out of that and left the city, and like what it is that you're doing, and try to maybe struggle a little bit on their own and find their own way instead of always having a boss, I think ultimately everybody would be happier, and I think the world would be a better place. So once again, at this juncture where you have, the boss man, the controllers, top down, bottom up. And that's just, I don't know. This is just how I see it, and I think if people saw it this way and attempted to be more independent in any way, shape, or form possible, instead of just being a cog in the machine, I think we would solve a lot of problems. Like, and this kind of relates back to people tweaking their diet and trying to figure it out, because you have the boss man yet again up here, these so-called authorities telling us what to eat, which has been just wrecking us, forever, versus people at the bottom figuring this stuff out for themselves, whether they're vegan or not, doesn't matter, right? Carnivore, whatever. But it seems to me that at the very least, if you're the one who's in control of that, instead of listening to what all these authorities or World Health Organizations or whatever are telling you, at the very least you're in control. And like, if you fail, then, well, that's all on you. You try to do better, you adjust, and you learn by this process to where hopefully one day you figure it out, right? Whether you're vegan or carnivore, once you get to that point, and this is exactly what I'm experiencing right now, when you stop listening to what somebody else is telling you is good for you, but you figure it out for yourself, you get this great sense of satisfaction, and you feel so stupid for having listened to all these other people who don't know you. They don't know what you're like, and their motivation is not to necessarily help you, but help themselves. You know what I mean? So that's really what I got to say about that.
No, you're absolutely right. And what you said about not being easy, like, no, I mean, people think that, I think people a lot of times they'll look at you or they'll, they'll look at me, or they'll look at people that are producing food on their own or have a certain lifestyle, right? And they're very envious of it, which I can understand why. But they don't understand the amount of work that goes into it. They don't understand like how much work it takes to be, you know what I mean? Like the appreciation you get mainly comes from a lot of hard work and lessons learned. Before I even started my channel up again, I was full-time RVing, like dry camping, like solar panels on my RV, traveling the country. Like that's what I was doing for, a couple of years. So you get a very good appreciation for, where your food comes from, where your water comes from, just environmental stuff in general. And I don't even do it for that. I do it because everything I do is about sustainability and efficiency. And it's just, you're right. It just, people don't realize how much it goes into to be able to go outside like you and just get fresh eggs or get fresh milk or get, put some ribs on the grill that are just, exactly where it all came from. Like people just don't understand the freedom that comes from that. They don't.
Yeah. So you've been going through some changes. We touched on that a little bit earlier before everybody got here. Why don't you tell us what it is that you're doing? I didn't really get the full sense of what it is
No,
myself.
so yeah, no. So I've been doing the whole, I was in an RV for the longest time, and then I decided to do like an urban homestead, which was pretty successful. And I just kind of got that, that feeling deep down inside of that, I want to go, I just want to go to the full on homestead on acreage. And so yeah, I sold my home, and I'm actually, that's where I'm headed. So I'm super excited about it. A lot of the infrastructure is already there, set up. It'll be a pretty easy transition. But it was one of those things where it was like, if this is meant to be, then hopefully it won't be, in this economy, which is doing pretty well, it won't be hard to sell and everything. And within the first day of putting my urban homestead up, it was snatched off within 2 hours, it was snatched off the market. So I got what I wanted for it, and it was just, everything is just, so far there's been some bumps in the road, but it's been transitioning pretty smoothly. So and that's why I was talking to you, like kind of reaching out. So now that I have a whole lot more grassland, so to speak, just talking about goats, and I was going to hopefully kind of get your opinion on that, because I want to get at least 2 cows, and then I want to get some goats. So
Damn.
so yeah, that's, I'm super, like I said, I'm super excited. Everything, it's amazing. It's amazing what kind of, how excited people can get, how excited I am. But yeah, I kind of wanted to touch base with you a little bit, because I know you raise goats, and I know a little bit, but I don't know enough on goats to really have a, to know
How
what to
much
get.
how much land did you get?
So overall, the overall parcel is so the one I'm on is a couple acres, but the surrounding acreage, the owner is elderly, and they're wanting somebody to do something with it to help maintain it and stuff. So that acreage is over 150 acres. So
Oh, geez.
they're wanting to put animals and stuff on it. So
Wow.
or use it to graze or whatever, because it's just when the grass gets so big, and it becomes, this becomes a fire hazard. So
Yeah.
they're wanting somebody that can help work that acreage. So yeah, I'm super
So
excited
what's
about
the
it.
topography? Is it flat,
It's
hilly, mountain?
it's it's a little hilly. It's mostly flat, but it's a little hilly on one side. Not a lot of lumber on it, which is good, and there's a river that runs right through the middle of it.
Oh,
So I mean,
cool.
it doesn't get much better than that. It's
Clean
all,
water.
yes, very clean.
Does it rain year round or?
It rains a lot. Yeah, it's in the Pacific Northwest, so we
Okay.
get more rain than we know what to do with
Some
sometimes.
snow sometimes, a little bit.
Barely, not really.
Yeah.
It's close to the coast, so it doesn't get a whole lot of snow.
Wow. That
So
sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
no, man, like I said, I'm super excited. So what kind of goats? Like I was thinking meat goats and then milk goats, but I know milk goats have their own. You kind of have to get special breeds for those. So I was kind of wondering what you did or what you do, and just kind of give me some.
Do you want milk?
I mean, I'm not a big milk drinker, but I guess I'm one of those people that is not lactose intolerant, so I have no
Do you like
problem
cheese?
drinking it. I love cheese.
Yeah. Then you probably want some milk goats. But it's really like, if you want the meat, then you get meat goats and they'll have some milk too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So
Yeah, because some people are telling me like Nubian milk goats are really good, but like I said, I don't know. I thought I'd talk to the goat expert.
Nubians are good for both meat and milk.
Are they?
They definitely have a fattier milk. So if you're into cheese, that's good milk for cheese. I would, yeah, Nubians are probably great. The thing you want to do probably is go find somebody in your area that has goats, and that's going to probably be your goat because it's adapted to your climate and that area, right? You don't want to bring them from too far away, I would say.
No,
And,
there's a huge 4-H program here,
uh-huh.
huge 4-H
Yeah.
program. So there's, I mean, the county fair is one of the biggest in the state. So they
I'm sure
have
you could
lots
get
of.
Boers. I don't know how well they would do in a colder climate because they're from South Africa, but
Oh
the
yeah,
goats are very adaptable. I think they might do okay. But if you could find Boers, I mean, they're beautiful meat goats. But again, you get like a 220, 240 pound female, she's gonna have some milk. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, absolutely.
So if you're not a big milk drinker, I would just go with meat goats and
You always get a little bit of milk from it anyway.
yeah,
So
exactly, exactly. And you could give like the babies after the first couple of weeks, you could just give them formula and just steal their milk.
yeah,
You
no,
evil carnist, you.
yeah, I know. Now I know there's like a lot of recipes and stuff out there, but if you have some, if you have a good goat cheese recipe, you should it's not like a family secret. You should send me some recipes so I can start experimenting with
Oh,
this stuff.
dude, like there's so much stuff out there. What we do is generally just farmer's cheese.
Okay.
It's really simple. You just warm up the milk to like 175, and you dump a little bit of vinegar in there, and it just makes this really nice and soft, very delicious farmer's cheese. You could just like let the milk sit and spoil, quote unquote, spoil, and you strain out what little bit of whey there might be a little bit of separation, not much. You just basically strain it out and you get like really good cream cheese. You just let the milk spoil, and you let it sit in the cheesecloth, and it's just so easy. If you want to get into like more fancier cheeses, aged cheeses, then that's a whole nother thing. But like uh, it's ridiculously simple, like processing milk into cheese. And the fun thing with it is just like playing around and experimenting, and it's depending on like the temperature or whatever's in the air that happens to fall in there. I'm talking about bacteria or microbes. Like the flavor's going to change. It's really simple. It's like basic simple stuff.
Well, I'm super excited. Well, I think that might be the way to go then. Get some meat goats, and if you get a couple of them anyway, and they're female, I'm sure they'll produce more enough milk and the dairy products that I'll need. So that's probably how I'll go then. Especially if they
Yeah,
produce a lot of meat.
totally. Nubians, I personally don't like them because not that I've had much experience with them, but there are some Nubian crosses around here, I guess. They're just loud. I can't stand a goat that will just bleat all day, every day, and some of them will. Those are definitely prime candidates for dinner, basically. The
Super,
loud ones.
super sassy. So what meat goats do you recommend?
I mean, I would love to be able to get Boers. They're not available around here. So anything like a Boer or a Boer cross, I'd go for it. I would stay away from pygmy goats, like the really small breeds, because they're just rambunctious and they're troublemakers. Um, I would look for Boers, to be honest with you, or like a Boer. If you can get a Boer Saanen mix, you're gonna probably get best of both worlds. Saanen is a milk breed that makes probably the most milk, and Boer is a meat breed. So if you get, a cross, you get best of both worlds. And they're both big goats, so you're going to get a good amount of meat, and then you're going to get a good amount of milk on top of that. And Saanens and Boers are really docile, they're calm. They don't make a lot of noise. They're really nice animals.
That's good. Oh, there's one more thing I have to tell you too. I was talking to Sea Siren, and I was reluctant just because of how plant based I have been in so many past years. But because of all the meat that I've gotten, the damage tags that I've gotten, I've been eating majority meat. I mean, I still eat plants. Don't get me wrong, but most of the plants I've been eating have been fermented for fermented vegetables, just because it's just because the season. I mean, the growing season hasn't started yet, so the majority of stuff that I have left over, right, is going to be fermented, obviously, because it's what you do when you eat in your crop zone.
Wait. So you've been corrupted? Because I remember you being almost vegan,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, no, not almost. I mean, I guess a vegan, I guess plant based, like 70% plant based, that eats his own, that dispatches his own animals. But no, that's kind of flip flop now. I'm doing like 70% meat, 30% like fermented vegetables and that kind of thing. And everybody's been complimenting me on how much, you know, that I'm a little thinner, and I've been putting on a little bit more muscle. So I have you to blame for that.
It works, man.
It takes a lot of humble pie to admit that, but it's the truth. So there you go. What can you do?
Live and learn. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
it,
and don't me wrong. I still like. Don't me wrong. I still like plants. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that like
plants
I'm
are
not
delicious.
crazy.
Plants are
I
delicious.
love them,
Yeah.
but I do like elk steak a lot. It's great. The elk here this year it was fabulous, and I have so much of it. And the rabbits have been doing really well, and yeah, man, like it's been good, and I feel great. So
Are you
can't
doing
really
like
complain.
high protein, high fat, or you're just eating, not worried about much of any of that?
I'm not one of those, like I don't, I think it was Drew that you had on, and dude, I can't, his story, man. I mean, if his story alone doesn't jive with you or make you at least like sit and stop and think, I don't know what does. Like him putting out his chronometer out there for the world to see, and him documenting all this stuff and everything like that, like, oh man, and for him being the athlete that he was, like, me personally, I eat meat and I eat vegetables, and when I feel full, like, there's no science behind it. I just, my body knows what my body needs, if that makes sense. I don't know. Does that make sense?
I'm a huge proponent of intuitive eating. I've gotten to a point these days that because I do eat primarily animal products, I eat some plants, but I've learned that there's just certain foods that I know if I eat this certain thing, I'm gonna just feel like shit. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not like my stomach's gonna hurt, I'm gonna throw up, get all dizzy, none of that. I'm not gonna get sick literally, but because I used to always eat these things and not ever think anything of it. Like a little bit of rumbling in your stomach was normal. Everyone experiences this, right? Feeling a little bit sluggish after a meal. Well, this is just what happens after you eat, right? All these things were assumed to be normal. And now that I've cut all that stuff out, at least initially, 100%, and I will reintroduce certain things here and there, it's literally I'll put a certain food in my mouth and the flavor that it gives me, and there's this like head feeling that I can't quite explain. I know that it's going to progress into my gut not feeling the best, me not having the best energy. I just, as soon as I taste something, I already know how it's going to make me feel. And I've never had this sort of connection with food before. And I think an elimination diet, whatever the hell you want it to be, allowed me to gain this different relationship with food and different, and now I respect the food that I eat so much more. And there's just certain things that I just won't touch, period. Because even though they're not going to mess me up or anything like that, I could digest them fine, whatever, right? But I've just been feeling so much better that anything I want to stay in this little range here, right? Anything below that is no longer acceptable. It's suboptimal. Whereas before it was okay. Nowadays it's just like, nah, it's not worth it. That cupcake over there, it looks delicious. I know it's keto. I know it doesn't have sugar in it, but I just know as soon as I eat that, as soon as I put that thing in my mouth, I know exactly what's going to happen, and I'm not going to be a happy camper or as happy as can be. So it's a journey, man, and I think that's why I think intuitive eating, it's the best way to go. You could read studies, you could listen to what somebody else has to say, but until you do it yourself and you record literally how certain foods make you feel, and you begin to understand that, and you finally like get in touch with your body and the food that you eat, how it makes you feel, um, that's just the way to go for me personally. I listen to people, I'll look at studies here and there, I take what people have to say into consideration, but ultimately the arbiter, the judge, it's always going to be me. So I'm all for intuitive eating for sure. Go ahead.
No, you're talking about studies, and no, I totally agree. And that's the thing that I don't understand about these vegan studies. Like if you look at Drew, his name's Drew, right? If I'm getting his name
Yes,
mixed up,
Drew
I
Morgan,
apologize.
definitely. No, you
Yeah.
got it.
Like if you look at the scientific studies that he's done on himself, that's way better than any of the vegan studies we've seen. Because on any of the vegan studies, especially the the one study where it reduced heart, it reduced to basically reduced heart disease, it took away heart disease or whatever, reversed heart disease. Well, that study doesn't tell you what they ate day to day. It just says that they weren't allowed to eat certain products, but we don't know what they ate. Tell me what they ate every single day. Show me what they ate. You can't do that. With Drew, though, we have years of empirical. This is what he ate down to the gram, and he was dying, And so how that is not scientific, or how that does not go to prove how bad that a diet is, I really don't know what to say. It's beyond words to me.
And you could literally observe his transformation. Now, some people are into building muscle, whatever. I'm not into any of that stuff. However, if that's what you're into and that's what you're going for, I clearly see the difference. The things that I notice the most about him is just his eyes. I hate to keep bringing it up. I don't know. It's whatever, but like, he just looks so much better now. And I'm not even talking about the fact that he's put a lot of muscle on. It's important to him, and that's great that he's able to get these gains that he wasn't able to get on the plant-based diet. But like, how are these signals not strong enough? You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the greatest manifestation or sign of health, but this is what he wants to do. This is who he wants to be, and it's working. So how do you ignore that and try to cite him studies when he's figured it out? You know what I mean? I've figured it out. Whatever it is that I expect, like, I've figured it out. I'm not saying I figured it out completely, but I mean, it's just crazy the kinds of energy that I have now. I'm gonna make some videos and I'll show you guys like these little changes that I've noticed. I used to have like these puffy eyes, bags under my eyes, and I'm not trying to act like I'm some kind of model or anything, that I'm perfect or anything like that. But I have photos from like 3-4 years ago where I actually looked older than right now, and go figure.
No, I agree, and like I said, the amount that everything that he's been through, like I don't get it. You know what I mean? I don't get how anybody could say that he did. How did he do veganism wrong? Like I don't know, or any of these people, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? How are
How
you
do you
going to
do it
tell?
right? That's my question.
Exactly. No, like literally, how else could he have done it any differently? Like I don't understand. What does the guy have to do in order to prove that he gave it his best shot scientifically? You know what I mean? Like what does the guy got to do?
Yeah, ultimately, it's not about science. They want to call that an anecdote, when an anecdote is generally, not always, but it's like an obscure little story about you that's not really recorded. It's just, it's it's very short, it's not detailed, and it's obscure. That's an anecdote. When you have videos and you've documented your journey, and then you have photos before and after, that's no longer an anecdote. I'm sorry, that is no longer an anecdote. That is science, period. I don't give a shit if any white coat stamped off, signed off on it. None of that matters. That is science. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. No, you're absolutely right, and that's why I don't understand how any. I don't get it. It's kind of what we saw with Brandon in that debate. There's the rules for him, and there's the rules for you. And how dare you if you try to apply the same standard he applies to himself in regards to ethics, science, or math? Like it's just what I mean. Is non-existent for them. It's one set of rules for them, one set of rules for everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. I can't relate to these people. I don't despise them, but they do make my blood boil sometimes because of the ignorance and the arrogance and the hypocrisy and all these other slappable offenses. It's just, this shit ain't right, man. It's just not right. And again, to look at, like, we keep throwing this, myself and a few other channels out there. We'll throw this stuff in their face, like, this is this is what this person looked like before the vegan diet. This is what they look like after 5 years of the vegan diet. And this is what they look like 6 months after ditching the vegan diet. And with the worst, uh, them looking their worst is like right smack dab in the middle of the vegan diet. But they'll just ignore all of that because, you know, poor animals, I guess. I just don't understand it. Like, it's staring you right in your face. I'm not saying some people can't do veganism right, whatever that means. I'm not saying that, but there's a lot of people, one after another, where you just see the vegan deterioration. I mean, perfect name for a perfect channel. Like, you just see it, you can't deny it, and yet every single day they come around and they deny it when it's just staring them right in their damn faces. And the fact that they're unwilling to try this for themselves so that they could actually see and realize what it is that some of us are talking about, that is like the highest form of bigotry, out there. It's like, these people have been there. I've been there to a degree. I was primarily plant based. I've been there, I've done that, and now I'm doing something completely different. And let me tell you, like, it's amazing. I don't care if your study says that I'm going to die 10 years younger than when I'm supposed to die, whatever that means. At the very fucking least, I'm going to croak when I'm, like, still walking around doing my thing, and then bam, I'm gone, right? I'm not going to spend the last 10 years of my life in bed fucking shitting myself. That's for damn sure not going to be happening. So these people, it just blows my mind how they reject the things that are so obvious and empirically verifiable. And for me, impossible to ignore. I just don't understand how that happens.
No, at the end of the day, the only thing that makes sense to me, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but it's a marketing scheme, man. Like, you're even seeing it with the vegan community. There's a few nonprofit animal sanctuaries that there's a lot of in-house fighting, vegan versus vegan. And look at Hench Herbivore, for example. The guy lifts weight. The guy's a big guy, but he would be on nobody's radar if he wasn't vegan. I mean, he's never going to be in a real competition and really win anything. You know what I
No.
mean? Like, he's only in bodybuilding because he has put his entire life behind veganism and now doing the whole CDB oil stuff. Like, outside of that, though, I mean, that's all. I mean, he's never going to be serious on any competition field. It's all these people. They're never going to be. No one's ever going to take them seriously.
Yeah, he's just downright average. I mean, I don't get into bodybuilding. I don't know much about it, but like, aesthetically, that dude's he's just big. That's all that he is. And I would never want to look like that. I'm sorry. Like, if people are into that, that's fine. I would never want to look like that. It's just, I don't know, man. The dude's gross. I'm sorry. The dude is just gross. And I respect bodybuilding, and like, I see the beauty in it to a point, right? But he's past that point. That's just like, the dude's just gross, man. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be mean, but yeah, he's no. If you like, Drew and I were talking about this, if you were just trying to break in this like YouTube fitness industry, yeah, people wouldn't really give him the time of day. He's only able to impress vegans that don't lift. They just use him as a little mascot, right? A poster boy for veganism. Oh, he's big, he looks strong, right? They don't really know what they're looking at. They just think, oh, well, he's a big dude and he's vegan, so yeah, that's a win for veganism. Fuck no, fuck no.
No, I agree. That's the only thing to me. That's the only thing that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense logically, scientifically, mathematically. It's a way for people to virtue signal and make money, and it's a big industry right now. And I get that, and I can respect that. I can respect the market value of it, but people wouldn't take these people seriously if they didn't have the vegan stamp by their name. You know what I mean? Like, any of them. Like, I can't see how anybody would take any of these people seriously, especially all these vegan athletes. They were all big before they were vegan, but it's like they're not competitive enough to make it an actual no holds bar input sport here. So they put the vegan title behind the name, and all of a sudden they're the way bigger deal. You know what I mean? Like, if veganism was the holy grail of athletics, wouldn't everybody be doing it? Like, it's all about getting ahead. You know what I mean? So if
Of
there was
course.
some miracle,
if there was some miracle potion or miracle recovery that was people were getting from this, everybody would be doing it. It's kind of like steroids. People use steroids because, for all intents and purposes, it works for what they're trying to get. If veganism was that, everybody would be doing it, not the minority. You know.
Do you know who Bernard Hopkins is?
I don't think so.
No
I
big
don't.
deal. He's a retired boxer who recently went vegan, and there was a little interview with him, and they asked him, or he just it was just so funny because he's walking through an airport or something like that, and a reporter stops him to do an interview, and the first thing out of his mouth is, guess what? I'm vegan. Like the stereotypical vegan that will tell you that they are vegan, right? How do you know who's vegan in any particular room or whatever, right? Well, just wait, they'll tell you, as the joke goes. I know I totally butchered it, but that was him. Anyway, they asked him, would you recommend a vegan diet for any up and coming boxers? And he was just like, no, don't do it. You're going to be weak. You're going to be all this and that. Like, he completely and utterly disrecommends the vegan diet for any athlete out there, even though as a retired athlete, he's on it himself.
No, I can respect the honesty. I mean, at least he has that going for him. I mean, I just don't, like I said, if it was the holy grail of athletics, everybody would be doing it. That's just what it comes down to. I mean, it's simple common sense. I know common sense isn't all that common, but I mean, let's just
Yeah,
look at this.
no, it doesn't work. I mean, there's a lot of people trying it, but you don't really see these success stories. There's somebody who will, build themselves up and become the best that they can be by eating a meat-based diet or some meat at the very least. Then they'll go vegan, and maybe some of the success will continue, and then they fall off, and that's the last you heard of it. They're no longer vegan, or they just start sucking, and that's that. There's no like long-term success vegan athlete story. It's not there. It just isn't there for the reason that you outlined, right? Because if it did work, everybody would be on it.
I can't think of anything. I can't think of anything else. I mean, I really can't. Like, I don't. That makes no sense to me. But I get it. It's one of those things where if somebody's like, "Hey, all your bills are paid. I'll give you $10,000 a month. All we need you to do is be fanatic about veganism." That might be appealing to some people. I personally couldn't do it because I just couldn't live with myself. But for some people, they can die on that. They can die on that fence, so to speak. Like they can take that on and be like, you know what, I can bullshit this for $10,000 a month plus travel paid expenses. I can do this. Good for you. If somebody can do it, they can do it. And that's probably why a lot of these people are closet. They are closet eating animal products because I don't know everybody, but the people that I've seen that have been caught so far, like they say that, oh, the last couple of months I've been struggling. Yeah, I think you've been struggling since you started, sweetheart. You know what I mean? Like, you clearly knew what you were doing was wrong, or not wrong, was right, but was going against your ethical value. And I don't know. The vegans that I like, my wife knows some vegans, and they're vegan like when they want to be argumentative, but behind closed doors they eat ice cream, they eat cheese. They'll have a piece of salmon every once in a while, and you know what I mean. But since they don't do it all the time, it's like, come on, like that's so common in veganism from the vegans that I've met, that I don't even believe that most of these activists are 100% plant based. I just don't believe it.
I don't either.
I don't. I'm being honest with you guys. I'm sure there's those of you out there that are saying that's anecdotal. You can't say that. I'm just saying every vegan I've met in real life, it's a persona, and in their personal life, if they happen to eat some cheese or happen to have a slice of cheesecake, oh well, like it's not the end of the world. They ask for forgiveness. They ask Mick to forgive them, and they're set on their way.
Yeah, I think most of them cheat too.
I just don't know how. I'm just being honest. I know I'm probably gonna give you a lot of people are gonna hate your channel more than they already do because I said that, but I'm just being honest with you, Carnival.
Dude, I mean, come on, man.
I'm just being honest. They're cheating.
Yeah, I've said it many times, and I'm gonna stick to it. I think they are too. It's this whole meat is gross, milk, animal secretions, eggs are hens periods. They're trying to convince themselves that the shit doesn't taste good because they crave it, they want it, they can't live without it, so they have to brainwash themselves that eggs are somehow periods when they couldn't be any, they couldn't be more different, and it has nothing to do. Like, I don't even feel like getting into that, but
No, it's like the first video I made, and that's where I first met you. Is when you commented on it. Like when I was saying, well, if it's so bad, like why did so many people quit? Like for example, me, I can tell you that I couldn't eat like eating another person. That's like you don't have to tell me, hey, don't eat human flesh. So you know what I mean? Like human flesh is bad. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't have to convince me not to do it. If you were to have this amazing meal and said, hey, guess what? There is a tablespoon of human feces in it. I'm not going to eat it. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to convince me. I'm just not going to eat it. But for vegans, it's like they have to really like they're fighting it every time. Okay, there's there's some dairy in here. I can't do it because dairy is pus or it's this. It's I can't do it. Like they have to. They're psyching themselves out so much. It's like if it's that bad, it should be an easy no. You know what I mean? Like if it's all about morality, it should be an easy no. Because I don't have what it's. I see something as immoral, bro. I don't have a hard time saying no to it. You know what I mean? Maybe that's just me. It's just not. You know what I mean? Like if I really thought this food was bad, I wouldn't eat it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that proof is in the pudding as far as me not supporting big animal agriculture. Like, it's a non sequitur for me. You know what I mean? Like, okay, that I don't like that. I'm not going to do it. But for them, it's like they make it seem like every meal is pivotal. It's like, oh my gosh, dude, relax. Like, chill out.
yeah, no, I mean, meat tastes amazing. It smells great. you know, Milk, if you could handle it, is awesome too. Eggs ain't bad either.
No, I get it.
How do
No,
you? And then and let me just rant a little bit about
go
vegan
for it.
pastries, because I've tried some vegan pastries. Like, I would never touch that anymore. But this shit is just some of the worst shit ever. Why? Why do you do this? Why do you try to pretend like you can make a vegan cheesecake or like a vegan muffin that's actually going to taste good? If it doesn't have butter, if it doesn't have eggs, like, just forget about it. Like, just do something else. Stop trying
I have
to
to stop you for a second.
imitate. Go ahead.
Why would you eat a vegan pastry? I don't even think I've done that yet. What made you like what were you just like I want to hurt myself today? Like, you know what?
Friends,
I need to abuse
friends,
myself. I need to abuse myself and lashing isn't working anymore, so this is what I'm going to do. But you
friends. So I know some people that sell vegan pastries at like the local farmers market, and sometimes when the day is over and it's time to go home and they have some stuff left over, they'll just give it to you, and then you're like, and then obviously the next day they're gonna be like, "Oh, did you like it?" So you kind of have to try this shit, right? And my God, is it horrible? It's just, I don't know, man. It's like eating car tires or fucking shoes or something, shoe soles. It's just like, this shit's disgusting. I don't know why you would even try. Like, do your own thing, process these plants however you have to, be original, but don't try to mimic something like animal products after you already removed all the animal products. It's not going to work. It's shit's just disgusting. And the only way why these people like this stuff is because they load it up with sugar, salt, soy sauce, to get that umami flavor into it. Oh, I just remembered going to this vegan restaurant in Berkeley, California with these people
you
because,
went to a vegan restaurant too?
dude, this was like 8 years ago. I don't remember. This was a long time ago. My God, not only was the food shit, I felt like crap after that. And obviously I wasn't even carnivore at the time, but it's just these things you do in order to grease the wheels of social interaction and what have you, just to be nice and so on and so forth. Never again, man. Never again. Like, I can't do it, man.
I still can't believe you did that. That's crazy.
This was a this was
nonsense.
a long time ago. I was actually contemplating, like, not really veganism, but I did go vegetarian for maybe a month or two, and I was starting to sound like these vegans that I despise so much. I was saying, like, this whole thing about meat rotting in your colon. Like, I was literally being brainwashed by the ideology. Gladly, I mean, I'm very happy to say I never fully went that way, but I can understand why people fall for it because I almost did myself. So I can understand why this happens, but
Well, the best carnivores are prior vegetarians and vegans. I mean, those are the most. I mean, you're not going to convince Primal Health Edge to go back. You're not convince yourself to go back. You're not going to convince Drew to go back. You know what I mean? Like these are
no.
people that you just can't convince this is the right thing to do. I mean, maybe it sucks to say this, but maybe it just takes somebody that's been in those trenches, you know, and been there, done that to realize that. Hey, that's why I asked had you ask that guy the question, like, is there anything anyone could have said to you that would have made you change your mind? And he was really like, no. I mean, I think the real proof is just my health was deteriorating and I was dying. Like, I just feel like that's sometimes what it takes. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, once you get burnt, I mean, you learn the hard way. You'd be insane to go back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I've never been there, but I
And
just Drew's story alone.
especially now that you've actually realized, not just by failing, if you were vegan or vegetarian, but also by finally taking a critical and logical look at veganism, like it's nutrient deficient, for example, like we need meat, for example, for these reasons, so on and so forth. Once you have that foundation that you lacked, which allowed you to become vegan in the first place, it's just like you really have no reason to go back. You finally understand the mistakes that you made on various levels, and you become the best advocate for, if not the carnivore diet, definitely anti-vegan, if you will. So what this is why people go carnivore from being vegan. And maybe that's too extreme. I don't know. Maybe ultimately carnivore diet will turn out to be a big fucking flop one day. Maybe, I don't know. But it's because people realize just how stupid, dogmatic, and ideological they were. So, you know, I don't know what kind of personal, like, why anyone would go back. You know what I mean? You'd have to, as a person, as an intellectual, as an intelligent person, you'd literally have to devolve in order to accept veganism after it already failed. I just don't see how that would happen or why.
Or my best guesstimation is somebody gives you a lot of money and you have a really nice closet that you eat cheese and ice cream out of. I mean, that's the only other thing I can think of. I mean, here's the thing: people do things for money. You know, models will starve themselves to be at a certain weight. Bodybuilders will force so many calories down their system, and they they shape their lives to be whatever it is that they're trying to do. And so, I mean, that's the only thing I can think of is the money is good and they have a good way of hiding it. And that's the only, like, that's, if I saw, not that this would happen, but if I saw somebody that was, had been on the other side and decided that they're going to go vegan again, it would be like, okay, so what's the profit margin here? It must be pretty good. Good for you, my dude. Like, that's the only thing I could see that would cause that to happen.
Yeah, maybe. Not for me though, obviously.
Oh, yeah, I could. I mean, I couldn't start. I mean, there's just no way. Like I said, and that's why I have a lot of respect for, for Drew and Primal Health Edge and all these people. Because you guys know it firsthand, and that's why you can say it, without equivocation that that this is harmful, and it is harmful, and it's just it's sad because when you look at it in totality, we know that veganism is not the end game. Control is the end game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's all it comes down to. Like, legitly, it's not about the diet. They can care less about the diet. It's about control. And when you can implement laws like what we've seen in New York, meatless Mondays in all the school districts, or in Florida where it's illegal, like they won't even challenge, the Supreme Court of that state won't even challenge, backyard gardening. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mhm.
illegal to grow gardens, and we're not even going to talk about it. Like, when you see that happen, that's the real message of veganism. That's where the ultimate end is. Because these people don't care about growing food. These people don't care about environmental impacts. These people don't really care about the things they say they do.
They don't care
They
about whole
package it.
food plant-based.
They
Yeah, they
don't.
don't. Right. It's all about processed junk and crap. Like they could make their videos and their recipes with whole food plant-based, but they're going out to eat. They're eating chips. They're eating trash. They're eating. I'm not saying all of them, but this whole food plant-based it's got to be like the most boring way of eating. You know what I mean?
No,
But
it's nonsense.
somebody asked, vlog like no one is watching asked, what if your health starts to suffer on carnivore? I'd like to answer that real quick.
Go for it.
Well, it's like, well, first of all, it's hard to imagine, but if you mean that, let's say I develop some kind of nutrient deficiency, then I'll find out what food I need to eat to remedy that. Maybe I'll take a supplement. It's like it's hard to answer that question because you'd have to be specific and tell me, well, what do you mean by my health suffering? What's going to happen? Like the digestion's fine, the knees are fixed, I have better energy, like everything is better. If I start, I don't know. If I start feeling suboptimal, well, then I'll figure out why that is, and I'll do my best to fix that, whether it's by tweaking the diet or, exercising, or maybe, not, just because like you're eating what you think is the best diet to eat, that doesn't mean that your health will never deteriorate. I mean, I expect to die one day. I expect to fall apart and die. And I won't necessarily be, if I have no reason to believe that it's the diet, then I'll just accept it and roll with it, right? If I could find what the reason is, and if that reason is something about the diet, I'll just tweak it. I'm not like committed to anything here. You know what I mean? So I think the problem is that, and I'm not saying these people don't have a good point, but this idea that simply because you're, let's say, on the carnivore diet, whatever the hell that means, that doesn't mean that you're the exact opposite of someone who's on the vegan diet at all. I'm not saying that there aren't some people like that, very dogmatic and, you know, just bigoted, whatever. I'm not saying that those people don't exist, but I'm definitely not one of them. I eat plants and I don't intend to stop eating plants. I just don't eat very many, and it's primarily animal products, 90 to 95%. So, yeah, I don't know how to answer that question. But I think I already did anyway. So,
No,
do you
I
have
think,
anything to add to
yeah,
that?
I just wanted to add, when we're talking about diet, like this is such a broad spectrum question, but I mean, it's one of those things where you have to, like, it's what you said intuitively, like you have to know your body, and you have to be able to differentiate between foods. And I know for a lot of people, and I think, and I'll be honest with you, I have the luxury of, I can go outside and I can pick something and I can eat it, and that food that I eat is going to taste way different than when I bought it in the store. But when you know your food so well, and especially on that level, like the way you and I do, like, I can eat something and I can know, oh, my body likes this. But then again, I don't have this problem of where most Americans or most people in the West, everything's processed. You know what I mean? Like, it's not real food. Like, the standard American diet is not real food. So if you're coming from that, and that's what you've lived your whole life, if you're 20 something years old and all you know is processed food, and then food that the waxy vegetables that you've bought in the store, and the meat that's been packaged from God knows where, yeah, I can see how that would be very hard for you to do intuitively, to eat something and really know what that's going to do for your body. But for people like us, like, I mean, and I know it sounds crazy, but it's intuitive. It's like when a dog will eat a carrot, but he won't eat spinach, or he'll eat this, or he'll eat that. Like, a dog or any animal, they know intuitively what they can eat and what they can't eat, or what they should eat and what they shouldn't eat. So, I mean, if you're really that worried about it, and it sounds like he hasn't done it yet or whatever. I mean, I think the biggest thing with people is, this is the idea of eating all meat is so foreign to them, or the idea of doing something like this is considered extreme, where, 100 years ago it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't at all. Like, the idea of bone broth to people is, it's completely, like, unless it's given to them in a curry in a certain way, the idea of bone broth is just completely, like, foreign to them. And then you have somebody like me who will drink it like a tea. You know what I mean? Like, people just are so disconnected from how food used to be that, I can see why it can be really confusing. So just do what's good for your body. Obviously seek medical attention if you need it, but I mean, I don't want to say trial and error, but you really got to figure out what it is intuitively that you can handle and what you like, and just go with it. And if you're starting to see some really bad effects, like you said, tweak it, get it to where that sweet spot, so to speak. I mean, it's kind of hard because a lot of these people that I talk to, they don't know what real food is. And I don't know. It's sad.
Yeah.
I think I made it more confusing, but just go out there and just experience different things.
Yeah, like someone is saying that it didn't work for them carnivore, and it's like, well, we could sit here and try to pinpoint what the exact problem was, but ultimately I don't believe everybody should even try this. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you did something wrong, whatever that means, or maybe it's wrong for you. It's like figure your own shit out. That's what I'm trying to do. So, again, if it starts to fail, I'm gonna try to troubleshoot it and find what I can do. But someone else asked what my guilty pleasure plants are, or something. What's your guilty plant pleasure? Well, first and foremost, there's no guilt here. But as far as what plants I like eating, I have a thing for sourdough bread, man. Like, and I just go for it when I feel like it. But it can't be just like any sourdough. It has to be this specific sourdough, only white bread. I don't mess with like whole wheat. Nuh-uh. I don't mess with that stuff. Like from this specific bakery, and that's the only bread that works. And it actually makes me feel great. It gives me great energy, and it doesn't upset my stomach or anything. So I enjoy that. But apart from that, I just eat fruit. I just eat a little bit of fruit here and there, whatever that fruit may be. Um, yeah, I don't vegetables. No, thanks. I have no interest in vegetables. Tubers, no. Fruit. That's it. I just eat a little bit of fruit here and there with tons of animal products. But I'd like to wrap this up sometime soon. So maybe if you guys have some questions for me or Millennial Prepster, let us know, and we'll do
Yep,
our best
sounds
to
good.
answer them. Yeah. Did you what are you eating like these days? What is it that you eat? If you could
Me personally,
yeah,
yeah.
go into
So,
some detail.
like I said, I have hundreds of pounds of elk right now, and so I've been eating a lot of elk steaks, elk, and just pretty much every way you can
What
think
does
of.
elk taste like, if you could describe it? I've never had elk.
If you think of like a really lean steak, that's a little bit more gamey. I love personally, I love the gamey taste. Now you can kind of cook it out, or you can do different things to cook it out. But I mean, I love the gamey taste of meat. I don't know. That's just the way. I think it's just the way you're supposed to taste it, and I don't know. But elk is really good. Think of a really lean steak. I eat a lot of rabbit, obviously, because I grow rabbits. Chickens, eat a lot of chicken, eggs, duck. I had a really nice duck the other day. It was really, really good. So yeah, mainly just because the seasons, man, and just hunting and everything like that, and the fact that my growing season hasn't started yet. I mean, it started, but nothing's harvested yet. It's been majority meat based, and it's been really, really good. I do like bread. Me and my wife, we make our own sourdough actually. It's really simple to make. You have to let the yeast rise for a couple days longer than
Yeah.
for a normal bread. But yeah, I like fruits too. Most of the vegetables I've been eating right now have been fermented, which I think is really good. Like I love kimchi. I love bok choy, especially when it's been fermented. It's just
Okay,
good.
you just made me a liar because I will sometimes eat kimchi. I forgot about that. Is a vegetable, so yeah.
Well, yeah, but it's been fermented. So I mean, for fermented stuff, I mean, it's one of those things where you get rid of the anti-nutrient processes in it, and
Right, right.
I don't know. I like it. I mean, you just have to be real. Like if you're gonna eat vegetables, realize that vegetable doesn't want to be digested. So you're not gonna get the full nutrient effect from it. But when you ferment foods, like they've been doing in Egypt, for example, for hundreds of thousands of years, I mean, you do get more nutrient based stuff from it. So like I said, I like to eat plants, but I grow them, and I like fruit. Blueberries, raspberries, rhubarb grows really well out here. But I'm not, like I said, I'm far from vegan. Don't think that I'm a vegan by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, I'm looking forward. There's a cow co-op that's going on in the area, and so I might
Hmm.
be getting half a cow here within the next couple months or so, 4 months or so. So yeah, it'll be fun. You know what I mean? Like that's me, man. I love meat, and I'm eating a lot more of it now. And yeah,
Yeah.
anyone have any questions?
Yeah, there's a question. What do you think about the commercialization of the carnivore diet currently underway on YouTube? Good question, because I was actually noticing like the carnivore bar making an appearance on these various channels, people promoting that, so on and so forth, along with a few other things kind of like that. And what do I think about that? I think it's great. I think, now look, there's definitely going to be some problems with that eventually. There might be some pitfalls to what's happening. Maybe some people who shouldn't necessarily try this sort of diet for whatever reason, genetic or otherwise, nature or nurture, maybe that'll, this commercialization will convince some of these people to try this and it'll have negative impacts on their health. That's surely going to happen, no doubt about that. But I think it's good that people are pushing for animal products. And I think it's good that people are starting to value animal products the way they should be valued, because I think it's the fact that everybody, at least in the Western world, has gotten used to cheap meat. Let's keep it real, cheap animal products, and that has actually contributed to mistreatment of animals. If you consider it that has actually contributed to poorer quality, the production of poorer quality of food. So the more money gets pumped into animal products, the more people become interested in eating animal products. That's going to help out animal farmers. So I think it's a great thing overall, but cautiously optimistic. And I do realize that there's going to be definitely some problems with that as well. But I still see the good outweighing the bad. So I'm all for it. I think it's a good thing. I think a lot of people are gonna do it for all the wrong reasons or whatever, just to get rich. And there's gonna be issues and problems, no doubt about it. But overall, I think it's great because people need to relearn, and realize that animal foods should be the base of our diet. Not necessarily quantity wise, but if you don't have that animal base, I think you're going to suffer. So, do you have any thoughts about, and have you noticed even this commercialization of?
I've seen, the only thing I've really seen is from what's his name? I should know it. I can't. I'm tired. It's a long day. No excuse. Doctor, the doctor guy,
Sean Baker.
Sean Baker. I don't know how I forgot that name. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I think Sean. I mean, if they're talking about the commercialization that Sean Baker's doing and him, actually recommending small ranchers, especially the ones that come from the breadbasket, that are doing it right, that are doing the grass-fed thing, that are changing the quality of meat, changing how ranching is done, that whole thing. Because I looked at a lot of these systems, and these guys are doing the fodder systems, and these guys are really implementing real efficiency. I don't see how that's a bad thing personally. Like I said, I'm not a carnivore like 100% like you guys are, but I don't see how the commercialization of that kind of food processing and that ideology, I don't see how that's a bad thing. Anything that takes away from the low quality processed garbage we're getting from Oscar Mayer and these bigger animal agriculture practices, I don't see how it's a bad thing personally. I think it's great. If he's talking about that, I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on, like Butcher Box, I guess, and he who shall remain nameless, trying to do the same thing that they are doing. Like, I could see some problems with that, like someone saying that they're selling this organic, highest quality meat, while at the same time undercutting local producers and importing stuff that's not necessarily of the best quality. It's not necessarily the most sustainable. So, you got to take the good with the bad, and understand that it's not going to be perfect. And if some people are just straight up shilling just for profit, well, hopefully people aren't afraid to talk about that, and point out some of these problems that may or may not arise.
Right. And I'm me personally, like, I'll have to be honest, I'm speaking from a place of privilege in the regards that I don't buy my meat the same way everybody else does. You know what I mean? Whatever I don't grow, I have, I mean, as far as co-ops and stuff go, it's just way different than the person that's watching this that goes to the grocery store and grabs it from the shelf. So I'm speaking from a place of anything that would, incentivize and make, localities stronger in regards to food production, I think is a win. But coming from what you're talking about, yeah, undercutting subsidies, that's obviously I see as an overall net bad. But I got to put that caveat in there.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing is perfect. Nothing is ever going to work out perfectly. But so far, so good, in my opinion. Anyway, if you guys in the chat have any last questions, shoot. If not, I might just go to sleep. Yes, Nubian goats are beautiful. Look up Boer goats. Those are my favorite personally.
I will definitely look them up, and as soon as I get some, I'll be sure to post them for you guys, and I can tell you how sassy and how mean they're being to me.
I have no. Sorry, one last question. I have no experience with dry fasting, but we're putting our dog that has cancer on a one meal every couple of days dry fast. I read some stuff that just some rat experiments and how that may be effective. So we're I'm gonna we're gonna fast our dog. He's gonna eat every other day, raw animal organs only, and hopefully that cures his cancer. If not, hey, shit happens. Anyway, thank you all guys, all of you guys. I'm tired of shit for showing up, participating. Thanks for listening to us ramble about it, whatever it is that we been rambling about. You got any last thoughts? Because I'm done.
Yeah, no. Like I said, I know it's been a rough week for you. I'm just glad to be able to get on and talk to you again. It's been a while. I see that Sea Siren's also in the chat. It's good to see you. Hopefully, we can get another discussion going on. She's always picking my brain and making me think very, very hard. So I appreciate her. And yeah, all your viewers and stuff. You guys are awesome. You guys really are what make. I mean, I don't want to overspeak, but they really make this channel great. And your channel is great, and keep doing what you're doing. And I always love hearing your discussions, and especially like when I saw that Brandon one and it was like almost 4 hours. I'm like, oh, this is great. I can get a lot done in 4 hours, and it never, and it never disappoints. So I hope you guys get something out of it, and hopefully on the next one we'll have just as much to say as we do on this one. So thank all your subscribers out there for me, and you guys are great, and you guys have a good one, and keep eating that meat.
Yep. All right, man. Cool chilling. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.